Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of J.S. Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at Der Herr ist mein getreuer Hirt, which translates to The Lord is my faithful shepherd. This is a pretty straightforward chorale, not too much to say about it, other than there are a couple of interesting chord progressions here and there, but I'll talk about them when we get to them. Let's just start with the analysis. So we have one sharp in the key signature, we start on G major, we end on G major. I reckon we're in the key of G major. We start things off with a couple of passing tones, I guess more specifically 2 passing tones, and something that looks like a passing tone, but it's not quite a passing tone in the alto, but still continuing up via a smaller distance, a third than a second. And then we go to another G major chord, G, D, G, and B, some vocal rotation here where the voices sort of swap places so we don't need to reanalyze. Passing 7th on the bass before we get E, E, G, and C. That's C major in first inversion, which is 4-6. D, A, F sharp, and D, which is a root position D major triad, that is our dominant. And then we have A, E, and C, which we might be tempted to call 2, and I think that that's a valid analysis as well. But I think this E is an accented non-chord tone, or there's the possibility of it being an accented non-chord tone, and this is instead F sharp diminished in first inversion. And the reason why I think that is because we get a tonic triad afterwards, and it's much more likely for us to have a tonic triad following a dominant rather than 2. And the fact that the notes for the 7 chord are present strengthens that argument for me as well, but I think both analyses are valid. It just depends on your relationship with the tonality and how you decide to analyze it. They're more or less functioning the same way. So then we have B, D, G, and B. That's G major in first inversion, 1-6, with a passing tone in the bass. Then we have D, D, G, and A. This G is a 4-3 suspension over the bass. It's really this F sharp. That's our chord tone, which would make that a D major chord. And then in our imperfect authentic cadence, we have G major, G, D, G, and B, which is our tonic triad and root position. And the second phrase, the last phrase of the A section, ends in a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G. So we have one going to E minor here, E, E, G, and B, which is a submediate chord. It's our 6, where you then go back to 1, G major, B, D, G, and B, which is our tonic triad in first inversion, passing tone in the bass, before we get D, D, F sharp, and A, which is our tonic. It is our root position 5 chord, passing tones in the upper voices, before we get A, E, A, and C, which is A minor in root position. That's our 2 chord. So a bit of a transitive progression, similar to what we have going on here. D going to A. And then we have 4 voices moving on the offbeat here, which typically means that we have something going on. And coincidentally, just like how I said 2 doesn't often go to 1, we actually have 2 going to 1 here. B, D, G, and B, which is like a passing tonic triad in first inversion. The reason why I'm marking this in comparison to other times when I don't mark a situation like this in my past videos is because all of the voices are moving, and when all the voices are moving, I tend to think that the harmonic rhythm is being subdivided intentionally. But yeah, this is a passing chord. I don't think it contributes too much to the progression. It's more so just a byproduct of the fact that the chord or the notes can be analyzed vertically. In many cases where we have multiple voices moving, it's just a counterpoint because there's one note in there that can't be analyzed. But when all 4 voices are moving, in this case we have a configuration that's analyzable. And here we have a little interesting figure. We have C, D, F sharp, and A, which is D7 over C. That's our 5-4-2 chord. It's a D7 in third inversion. And then these tones are actually chord tones, so we don't need to mark them. So we have passing tones going in opposite directions, but the C swaps places with the tenor, and the D swaps places with the bass. Or sorry, other way around. The C swaps places with the bass, and the D swaps places with the tenor. So the chord gets turned into a 7-5-3 chord, where the chord gets turned into root position. And as we close in on our cadence, we have E, B, G, and G, which is E minor in root position, so this is a deceptive progression. And the 7th of the chord does not resolve down by step. Granted, this is part of like a quick passing figure, so I think there's some forgiveness there as far as the textbook is concerned, but the 7th of the chord does not resolve down by step like we would expect it to. This D is a passing 7th, and this A is a delayed anticipation because it's on 16th rather than on the 8th note. We get C, E, G, and A, which is A minor 7 over C. That's a 2-6-5. Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. We haven't seen one in the last couple of videos, so it's a little refreshing to see one again. Then we have D, D, F sharp, and A, which is D major in root position. That's our 5 chord happening on the and of 2. And this C is a passing tone, or a passing 7th, a little brief one, before we cadence on our tonic triad, G major, G, B, D, and G. Alright, looking ahead to our next phrase, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of A minor, so we're looking for a point on which we modulate, and I think it happens in and before this G sharp, so somewhere in this zone. So we start off with another G major triad, no need to reanalyze. We then have F sharp, A, D, and A, which is D major in first inversion. And then we have a descending chromatic line here. G, F sharp, F natural, and E. I guess the G is also part of that descending chromatic line, so these 4 beats are going down by half step. This F natural is part of a G7 chord, which is a secondary dominant in third inversion, 5-4-2 of 4, because G is also the dominant of C. And then that goes to our C major triad, which in the key of G is a 4 chord, E, G, E, and C, more specifically a 4-6 chord. And I think this is where we modulate to the key of A minor. It's no longer our 4 chord, it's our 3 chord. And that goes to E7 over D, a bunch of third inversion 7 chords in this chorale, D, G sharp, E, and B, which is 5-4-2 in the key of A minor. And then the 7th resolves the way that we would expect here to A minor in first inversion, C, A, E, and A, which is our tonic triad in first inversion. This F is a non-chord tone, this C is a chord tone, and it would kind of turn this chord into a 6 chord here, but I don't really think it matters too much because it's not really contributing to the texture, or it's contributing to the texture for sure. It's not really contributing too much to the chord progression. I think it's just an expressive tone, or just counterpoint. Here we have D, D, F, and A, which is D minor in first inverse, in root position. That is our 4 chord. And then we have E7, E, D, E, and G sharp happening on the offbeat here. Another 7 chord. That's 5-7, our dominant, as we prepare for our cadence on A minor, A, C, E, and A, which is our tonic triad. Next phrase is in the key of E minor. Even though we have this F natural here, I think we are in E minor throughout the entirety of the chorale. This F is just a... we'll talk about it when we get to it. Actually, let's see. So here we have D major. Actually, we could say that we are in A minor through here. You know what? I'd take that back. I think we're going to say that we're in the key of A minor for a bit longer before we get to our half cadence in the key of E minor. So we start off with D major here, and we could make the argument that this is a capital 4, right, like a major 4 chord, but because it's going to a G natural, I think this is functioning more like a secondary dominant, which in the key of A minor would be 5 of 7, which is kind of unusual, but we did see a secondary dominant of 7 in a chorale recently, so it's less of a stigma to analyze it for me, even though it's one of the less common chords we'll see. But yeah, I guess we have 5 in root position of 7. And I'll offer some analysis here if we want to say that it's in the key of E minor moving forward, and I'll offer the analysis that I have in my notes, but this F natural kind of throws me for a loop. Passing 7th in the bass, that then goes to G, D, G, and B, which is our 7 chord in root position, in first inversion. I always confuse the clefs going from treble to bass. And then we have F major A, C, F, and C, which is our 6 chord in first inversion, so some adjacent harmony going on, 7, 6, and then we get G sharp, B, E, and D, which is another 5-7 chord, but this time it's in first inversion, so we're seeing adjacent harmony here, which makes sense. And then we go to A minor, A, C, E, and C, which is our tonic triad in root position, and this is where we modulate to the key of E minor, where A minor is now our 4. Here we have F sharp and D happening at the same time, which is kind of like a passing 7 chord. Actually, I think I might mark that. It's like a 7, 4-3 chord, because this is like D7 over A, which would be second inversion, which is fine for a 7 chord. It doesn't have as much pomp and circumstance and like setup as a second inversion triad does, according to the textbook, which is generally consistent amongst Bach's writing, even though he sometimes breaks the rules. Regardless, we go to E, E, G, and B, which is our tonic triad. 4-7-1 is a normative progression, so it's good that we're seeing this passing 7th in the bass. We then get C, E, G, and A, which is A minor 7 over C. So this is not a 2-6-5 chord, but rather a 4-6-5 chord. Very unusual. The chord itself isn't unusual, but the fact that it's happening like a 4-7 chord happening as a predominant, like in a half cadence. I think this might be the first time we've seen this. But then we have this F sharp here. That is, I guess you could make the argument that this is like kind of a 2-6 chord as well if you hear that, but I don't know if I hear it that way. You could make the argument that this is actually a 2-6 chord and they're effectively functioning the same way. But regardless, we cadence on 5. B, F sharp, D sharp, and B, which is our dominant in root position. And that would make this a Phrygian half cadence, where we have flat 6 going down to 5 in the bass, which is a hallmark of the Phrygian mode, that half step between the tonic and the second degree of the pitch collection. Okay, moving ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G major, which is our tonic key of the entirety of the work. So we're looking for a point at which we modulate, and I think it happens in and around here. I think this C sharp right here is this is actually a D sharp as well, not a D natural. So no, I don't think that really changes anything. No, it's somewhere in and around here. Maybe it happens as late as here, but having it happen right before the cadence is kind of no, that is the case. I think it does modulate right at the beginning of the last phrase, or the last measure. We go to E minor, E, G, E, and B. 5 going to 1, that's good. Passing tones in the lower voices before we get G, B, D, and B, which is G major, which is our 3 chord in the key of E minor. Notice how we have like the makings of like a 7, actually. Might as well mark that. We have like a 7, or no, sorry. We have D, F sharp, and A, which is kind of like a passing 7 chord, but this E right here throws us for a loop, so we can't mark it. Oh no, that's not a D, that's a B. What am I talking about? Never mind. We have like the makings of like a 7 here, like F sharp and A is like the 7 of 3, or just like it's like a 2 chord in the key of E minor. It really doesn't mean that much. Never mind, I was reading too much into it. We have a couple of passing tones in the inner voices after our G major triad. And then we have F sharp, D, F sharp, and A, which is D major in first inversion. That's 7-6, so a transitive progression here. 1 going to 3 is kind of unusual. And 3 going to 7, it goes against the grain of the cycle of falling fifths, which is typically the order that you do go down a fifth, but sometimes Bach goes up a fifth. Actually, he quite regularly goes up a fifth. 3 to 7 is not that unusual of a progression for Bach. But then we have some non-chord tones here. This G is a non-chord tone. This C is a passing 7th. Oh, we have 4 notes. Let's go ahead and look for it. We have E, G, G, and B. That's like a passing tonic triad. 7 wants to go to 1, so a little bit of a modal sound here where we have the subtonic 7th going to 1, but still 7 going to 1 regardless. That's a normative progression. That's where we would expect the chord to go. And then we have D sharp here. D sharp, F sharp, A, and C, which is D sharp fully diminished 7th, which is our 7/7 chord, and this is our leading tone chord with the D sharp rather than the D natural. And then on the offbeat we have E, G, G, and B, which is our tonic triad happening again. And then we have C sharp, E, G, and A, which is an interesting chord. That would be 4, 6, 5, or 5 of 5. If this was D natural, that would be 5 of 5, but I think this is a harmonization of the melodic minor scale via the, you can see in the bass, C sharp, D sharp going to E. So that would make this 4, 6, 5. And then we have D sharp, F sharp, F sharp, and A. That would be D sharp diminished in root position. Notice how he doesn't double the leading tone here. Sometimes he does double the leading tone, but vast majority of cases he doesn't. I think I've only seen it once or twice. But this is a root position 7 chord, and 4 wants to go to 7, so that's a good sign. And here we have E minor, E, G, E, and G, which is our tonic triad. And I think this is where we're going to the key of G major, and it's now our 6th chord. Here we have B, G, D, and G kind of happening at the same time here, so there's a bit of a hint at G major happening here, but I don't think it's super important because this A cuts off the sound, and even though the chorale is most likely slowing down at this point, I don't think that's really, it's something we could talk about. It's not necessarily something we have to mark on the page. This A is still a non-chord tone though. Okay, next we have C, G, E, and A, which is A minor 7 over C. Bach loves his 2, 6, 5 chords. And then we have D natural, F sharp, D, and A, which is a 5 chord. Lots of dominance happening on ands in this chorale, so that's kind of an interesting thing that occurs very frequently in this chorale, especially in the B section. But that's what makes this a perfect authentic cadence, really, is the 5 going to 1, G, B, D, and G, which is our tonic triad and root position. And that is today's analysis. All in all, some interesting chord progressions, some transitive chord progressions, and some interesting points of modulation. I will actually go back and show you how I had analyzed this section here. If you want to say that you start off in the key of E minor from this point right here, you can call this A minor chord a 4 chord. You can call this D major chord a 7 chord. And then you can call this G major chord 3, 6, right? Or you can call this 7, 7 chord 5 of 3 as well. That's another alternative analysis. And then we have this chord right here, which is F major, which would be sort of like flat 2. It would be like a Neapolitan 6 chord, actually functioning the way that we would expect it to, where we go to a 5 chord as well. More specifically, or sorry, no, it would not go where we would expect it to. It would go to, is that a Neapolitan 6 chord? If it's not going to where we expect it to? Maybe it is. Yeah, you know what, we'll just leave it there. Here we have G sharp, B, E, and D, which would be 5, 6 of 4. And then we have 4 afterwards, and that's where the analysis stops. It's kind of an interesting progression because we would expect the Neapolitan 6 to go to 5, which is why I think this analysis actually is wrong, because I just saw this F here and assumed it was a 6 chord, rather than it being a, I don't know, I had analyzed it wrong in my notes, but I think this is a much stronger analysis, even though you could analyze it in the key of E. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to say. This parenthetical analysis, take caution when utilizing it if you're planning on using it for your own, but I don't think it's really functioning the way that we would expect it to, this Neapolitan 6 chord. We do see them, we've seen them very, very occasionally in Bach's music, but yeah, it's definitely not something that I would expect, and if I were to have expected it, I would expect it to function in the textbook fashion as a predominant chord. But here, it's not really functioning that way. It's preceding a secondary dominant. It's not even preceding B major. It's preceding E major, which would be more akin to say like 6 going to 5 in the key of A minor, which is how I have it analyzed outside of the parentheses. But regardless, thank you so much for watching the video. If you're interested in following me along on my journey to analyze all of the Bach chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification icon. I upload once a day, so if you want your daily fix of Bach or your daily fix of analysis, I will be here to provide a video. I have hundreds of videos scheduled because Bach harmonized like, I don't know, 420 something chorales. It's pretty crazy how many there are out there. And this is only episode 159, so I have plenty of videos scheduled for the future. And if you're into this sort of thing, feel free to follow me along. But that being said, again, thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.